I had to fire someone. She was not happy about it. "You're fired." Those two dreaded words are the last thing anyone wants to hear. As the manager of a small coffee shop, they're the last words I ever wanted to say. But unfortunately, I did have to say them, and the employee on the receiving end was less than pleased.
Seriously, Kala? Robbie comes in 20 minutes late every shift, and I'm the one getting canned? That's not fair. I won't accept that.
"Claire, Robbie has one leg. He gets a pass. You took cash from the register. That's not something we could turn a blind eye to," I said, crossing my arms. Claire pursed her lips, shifting her gaze to the ground momentarily before scowling at me once again.
It was only $50. I needed that money for rent, and I said I'd pay it back. Please, Kala, I need this job. I'll put $100 back in the register on payday. Just give me a second chance.
I let out a deep sigh. She wasn't taking this well. "I'm sorry, but there's nothing I can do. Aftermath has a zero-tolerance policy for theft. Even if you were to pay it back, the big boss still wouldn't excuse it. I would be putting my own job in jeopardy by looking the other way, and that's just not something I can afford to do. Your actions have consequences, Claire. You brought this on yourself." She glanced up at me with teary eyes. Though Claire was entirely in the wrong, my heart shattered for her all the same. She was a good kid, just a little misguided. Or so I thought.
I won't forget this, Kala. Mock my words. I'll make you pay.
She spat, before dramatically stomping out the door. My eyes grew wide, and my heart began to race. If any normal human being had said that, I would have blown it off entirely. But there's a little oddity about my job that I may have purposely forgotten to mention. You see, I'm a clairvoyant of sorts. I work at a coffee shop for the dead, and they tend to take things a lot more personally than the living. A gruff-looking man with a leather jacket and ripped jeans leaned against the counter, snapping my attention away from the door. He had an unkempt beard and a nasty road rash seared into his face. The shades obscuring his eyes exuded an air of confidence that he had no business possessing. Even so, his appearance didn't intimidate me in the slightest. "Don't worry about her, Kala. She's talking out her ass." "I appreciate the reassurance, Frank. I know she probably just needs to blow off some steam, but it always freaks me out when shit like that happens. No offense to all you dead folk, but I don't want to kick the bucket anytime soon, you know?" "That's fair. Purgatory ain't that bad, but it doesn't hold a candle to the land of the living. By the way, if you get a chance, can you whip me up my regular? I could use a boost." "Sure thing. Coming right up. Is there anything else I can get for..." I tried my best to stop myself, but it was too late. I knew better than to ask that question to Frank. "Yeah?" he grinned, leaning in closer. "Don't you say it, Frank. I swear, if you..." "I'll take your soul!" I glowered at him as he roared with laughter. "Come on, Kala, have a sense of humor," he wheezed, tears welling in his eyes. "Frank, you've told me that same joke every chance you get for the entire time I've been working here. It wasn't funny the first time you said it, and it's definitely not funny now. I ought to charge you double every time you tell it." He frowned at me before turning to his normal booth. "Geez, would it kill you to lighten up a bit? Buzzkill." As I was beginning to prepare Frank's blonde espresso, I heard the familiar chime of the door opening. A kid with disheveled blonde hair and scratches across his face hobbled inside, leaning on a crutch. "Hey, Robbie, nice of you to show up," I beamed, flashing him a warm smile. Glanced down at my watch. 20 minutes late. Right on the nose. "Always gotta give me shit, huh, Mrs. Keller? You try hopping to work one day, then we'll talk," he quipped, returning a grin. "You know what? Maybe I'll take you up on that offer. I do..." I froze mid-sentence. All the color drained from my face, and I suddenly found myself unable to speak. I clutched at my side, barely able to breathe. A random searing pain shot through my torso. I felt like I was going to pass out. "Kala? Kala, are you okay? Say something." Robbie rushed over to me, his face contorted with worry. I weakly returned his gaze. The agony was beyond anything I'd ever felt before. It was as if someone had stabbed me with a white-hot fire poker and decided to twist it a couple times for good measure. Excruciating was an understatement. Just as my vision was starting to go fuzzy, the pain began to dissipate. I gasped for air, leaning heavily on the counter for support. What the hell was that? "Oh, I'm alright," I said, turning my head. Frank had joined Robbie behind the counter. The pair of them both had a look of deep concern etched into their features. If I wasn't dying, I probably would have found it endearing. "Are you sure? You look like shit, Calla." That's it. I'm definitely charging him double. "Gee, thanks a lot, Frank. You're such a gentleman." "Don't mention it," he said, never giving any indication that he was joking. Robbie and I both glared at him. "Go sit down, Frank. You too." "Oh. Go sit down, Frank. You too, Mrs. Calla. You should probably take the rest of the day off. Don't worry, I can handle the shop," Robbie said, helping me to a chair. "You know what? I think you're right. I could go for a nap." After resting for a little while longer, I went home. Robbie wasn't a professional by any means, but I trusted him to keep Aftermath running smoothly, at least until I recovered. He really was a good kid. I always thought it was such a shame that he died in such a tragic manner. IEDs are no joke. I made sure to take it easy and get plenty of rest. I didn't experience any more phantom pains for the remainder of the day, but I knew that I would need to get a good night's sleep. With Claire gone, I'd be stuck on opening shifts for the foreseeable future. Yuck. I was almost done running through my task for the morning when it happened. A man approached the counter, his face obscured by a brown fedora. A sickly, yellowing newspaper was tucked beneath his arm as he placed a gloved hand onto the countertop. His aura alone was sinister enough to make me want to turn and run. "Beware." His gravelly voice sounded like his diet consisted solely of rusty nails and asphalt. I'd only heard that voice a handful of times before, and each instance made me sick to my stomach. "Why? What's coming?" "The girl." With no further elaboration, he turned and reclaimed his regular seat at the back of the shop. I was shaking in my boots. Why, you might ask? Well, I told you a little white lie earlier. The thing that approached the counter is no man. He's been coming in nearly every day for as long as anyone can remember, but that's about all we know about him. No one knows what he is. No one knows how or if he died. No one even knows his name. We call him Nona, short for no name, and the only things I'm completely certain of in regard to him are 1. That he's benevolent towards the employees of Aftermath and his patrons, and 2. That whenever he decides to speak, a terrible tragedy usually follows. There's no denying it. Nona is a bona fide, real death harbinger of death. I locked eyes with Frank, who wore the same bewildered expression that I did. His pallid features and wide eyes mirrored exactly how I felt in that moment. "What do you think he meant by that?" Frank murmured, never breaking eye contact. "I don't know, but whatever it is, it can't be good." "You got that right. Maybe it'd be safer to call in some backup on this one. I know Ivan's hopping between a couple different locations after landing the regional manager gig, but he'd be here at the drop of a hat if he caught wind of this, right?" "Yeah. Normally I'd try to avoid getting Ivan involved, but I think this is warranted. You remember what happened last time Nona spoke?" I said, a shiver rippling down my spine. Frank averted his gaze, the corners of his lips drooping into a frown. "I wish I could forget. The whole ordeal sent... Calla? Calla, you okay?" It had returned tenfold. My lower back throbbed with intense pounding pain. It felt as if someone was hacking away at my spinal column with an ice pick. I was paralyzed. If I moved even an inch, I would be met with another agonizing shockwave of hurt searing through my system. This time was even worse than before. Before I could even grasp what was going on, everything started to get fuzzy around the edges of my vision. I could feel myself fading, and fast. The last thing I could remember before losing consciousness was Frank's husky voice shouting for someone to call for help. Then my mental fortitude finally crumbled, sending me spiraling into an inky black void. I awoke in a hospital bed. Frank was snoozing in a chair beside a burly, hulking figure. I was so shocked that I had to do a double take. Ivan's chair looked comically small beneath his gargantuan frame. Those things were not made to accommodate 7-foot-tall giants like him. I honestly hadn't expected him to show up. Commuting is a bit more of a hassle for the dead, after all. But whatever the case, Ivan's eyes lit up, noticing that I was awake. Carla, are you okay, yes? I made the trip as soon as possible, Ivan said, shuffling up to my bedside. I couldn't help but smile. He might have looked intimidating, but at heart, Ivan was just a big Russian teddy bear. Yeah, I think I'm fine now. I don't know what's happening to me. I keep getting this really strong, crippling pain out of nowhere. Thanks for coming. But how did you get here so fast? It's only been a few hours. A devious grin crept across Ivan's face. I pursed my lips. I knew that look. I hitched a ride on top of car. It's an efficient way to travel. My mouth fell open. Ivan's bulky ass clinging to the roof of a speeding car going God knows how far over the legal limit? That's something I'd pay to see. Do you get everywhere like that? Everywhere subway does not go, yes. I opened my mouth, ready to scold him for being reckless, but thought better of it. Ivan was already dead. It's not like he could die again. Okay, Evil Knievel, let's step outside for a smoke break and let Calla grab a nurse, yeah? We want to get her back on her feet as soon as possible. Frank intervened, appearing at the foot of my bed. Ivan's mountainous body was so large that I hadn't even noticed him wake up. Yes. You have cigarette? Ivan asked, that mischievous grin returning to his lips. Yep. Got one calling your name, buddy. Calla, we'll be back in a few minutes, okay? I'd offer to catch someone's attention for you, but, kinda hard when no one can see us, Frank said, ushering Ivan out the door. It's very thoughtful. I should be able to manage. Don't take too long out there, I replied, flashing the pair of them a weak smile as they disappeared from view. I collapsed back into my bed. Why was this happening? I was beginning to think that I had pissed off some ancient forlorn deity when the dots suddenly connected. How had I not realized it sooner? The person responsible for all this was standing in the doorway. All the color drained from my face, and my eyes grew wide as saucers. With a slight tremble in my voice, I called out to her. Claire? The pale girl with jet black hair, loitering in the entryway, smiled. A wicked, demented smile that I can't erase from my nightmares. In addition, she was carrying a voodoo doll. One that looked eerily similar to me.
Miss me yet?
Claire asked, sinking closer. Of course! Claire, you know that I had no other option. It was...
Shut up!
She shouted, producing a scalpel from her pocket and holding it to the doll's neck. It was there. I could feel the cold metal blade against my flesh. Claire wasn't playing around.
I don't want to hear your excuses, Calla. You had your chance,
she said, playfully wisping the scalpel back and forth. I wanted to scream. It was as if tiny razor blades were dancing across my throat.
When you kicked me to the curb, you told me my actions have consequences. Well, so do yours,
Claire spat, leering down at me. This was it. I was convinced that I was going to die.
Don't worry,
she said, her enraged demeanor shifting.
I'm not going to kill you just yet. No, I just wanted to fill you in on what's to come. I'm going to stay true to my word, Calla. I'll make you pay for what you did to me. For a long, long time.
Claire giggled, removing the blade from the doll's throat. I gasped for air, coming to the realization that I'd been stifling my breathing. I trembled, turning to my psychotic ex-employee. She was smiling wider than ever.
I really must be going now. It was great to see you again. Oh, and remember, I'll be watching you,
Claire said, punctuating her statement by plunging the blade into the doll's leg, before skipping out the door. I shrieked in agony, desperately clutching at my throbbing calf. A couple of nurses rushed in and calmed me down, assuring me that everything would be okay. But honestly, I don't know if it will be, because Claire is still out there, and she knows how to hold a grudge. And that's I Had to Fire Someone She Was Not Happy About It by Horror Junkie 123, with guest voice SpacePantsPlays, my partner. And I'll tell you what, I'm really glad I got her to help me out with this, because I feel like the more voices you have in a story, especially with multiple characters, it kind of just helps. It just helps kind of build and immerse really, and she did a really good job. So look forward to her in a couple more stories up in the future. She did great. I'm really proud of her. Great job, babe. So let's go ahead and talk about the story itself. It's quite cool because initially you're like, oh, it's just somebody getting fired, but they clearly do some bad stuff. Maybe they come back and stalk the person or like kill people or whatever. It's just like the initial impressions. But then you kind of slowly unravel, oh, wait a minute, so it's a coffee shop for the dead. Well, that's interesting, kind of like an afterlife-y type situation. That's interesting. What kind of entities and things do they have coming in? Paranormal, ghosts, banshees, whatever. And that's all quite fun and cool and interesting. What we initially do understand is that Kala is human, a clairvoyant of sorts, but like the other people who work for her and her clientele and stuff are all dead people or ghosts, afterlife spirits, whatever you want to call them. But we didn't learn anything about Claire, right? There wasn't really anything right away that definitively kind of tells us whether Claire is human or not. We don't really get any descriptions or anything. She's just kind of quickly put out of the story. And as things kind of unravel more and you learn a little bit more about the other characters, even Nona and everything, it's just quite interesting, quite good, quite a nice, fun story. I've got to admit, I quite enjoyed it. Just for like a setting and the creativity behind it is really fun. But then at the end, when it turns out, oh my goodness, she's being attacked basically by Claire, who clearly practices some kind of a voodoo, black magic, what have you, and has a voodoo doll that she's clearly using to be able to actually hurt Kala. Very interesting little twist, because I was like, well, could she be, she could be some kind of a spectral spirit for all we know. We don't know what she is until far later on to the story, which is cool. It definitely makes it quite an interesting little spin on it. The fact that it's still a human attacking another human. But yet again, she might not be human. We still don't have enough information. But from what it sounds like, she's not dead. That's the only thing I can kind of say for sure. But yet again, I could be wrong. It's a great little story. It really, really is. It's not crazy long, which is nice. It's got a lot of like interesting characters and a lot of interesting storytelling points. No, I really enjoyed it. I really, really did, and I sure hope you did too. This has been Nate at Night, and we'll see you for whatever's next. Take care. Thank you so much to my YouTube members and Patreon members for all the love and support. It's thanks to people like you that we can keep growing.